Okay, so let me share screen here.
Why don't you republish this book?
What?
Why don't you get it typed in or scanned or
Here, give me more more influence than I'll ever dream of having. Okay, so we're talking about this differences of opinion, which basically difference of opinion which existed in history. And let's run through here. Shab Matisio ben Yochanan Chashmonai. Until Matisio, the son of Yochanan the Chashmonai, they thought Sha'asr Gam Lashim Melchama b'Shabbos. The Jews thought it's forbidden to respond defensively to war on Shabbos. Shechifa Yavanim Elef Chasidim Shischabu b'Mara b'Midbar b'Mara b'Yom Shabbos, when they surrounded Shechifa Yavanim, when the Greeks surrounded 1,000 Chasidim who were hiding in a desert, in a cave on Shabbos. Lo nasu la'amod al nafshoseihem. They not lo nisu la'amod, they did not attempt to stand for their lives. And they didn't even close the opening of the cave with stones. Not to be over this Rabban Muktzah. Rubam Nisrafu v'nechluku. Most of them were burnt and suffocated. Miyashan lapide eish, from torches of fire, smoke. My computer here. Okay, when fire is a smoke, of torch of fire, which the enemies tossed them on the cave. But Hashem years any Matisyo b'Torah, Hashem illuminated Matisyo's eyes in Torah, but Rosh Alpi Din HaTorah, based on the Torah mitzvah Chova Lashim Milchama. It's a mitzvah and obligation to respond with warfare on Shabbos. But even then, to initiate war with an enemy, and to fall upon him on Shabbos, lo iter gamhu. He didn't allow that either. Okay, and therefore, Kishitzar Pompeius, and Pompey came with his Roman legions to the capital to Yerushalmi, 133 years before the Churban, and he felt nach biyom Shabbos, when he rested Shabbos, nachu gam hanetzurim v'lo nilchamu imo. Also, people who were in under siege did not fight with him. He commanded his armies to desist from fighting on Shabbos, but to build a siege wall, and cast a siege ramp. And the people under siege did not bother them in their work. This is the reason that Yerushalmi was conquered. And Pompey penetrated into the Beis HaMikdash. For that man is we turn from free people to slaves of the Romans. You're not able to remove our necks from their metal yokes. It's so famous that the Jews not wage war on Shabbos. Is all from Josephus, by the way. Petach b'yom Shabbos. They were secure and surrounding them on Shabbos. They didn't think that the brothers would bother them. And they will not. I'm not sure what he exactly means by that, but they're not going to initiate a fight on Shabbos. When the rebellion against the Romans began, Agrippa II said, his speech he gave before all the citizens of Yerushalmi, Shabbos, you keep Shabbos, and you don't do Malacha on Shabbos, it's going to be very easy to vanquish you. Kasher Nutzchua B'Seichem Aydei Pompei. It's like your forefathers were vanquished by Pompey. V'Techalus Shabbos and Milchama. And if you're going to be Mechal Shabbos during war, and then you're there, Lam Lachem Kol Milchama. I know what the point you're going to war is. You want to go to war with Romans. The reason you're going to war is in order to keep your Torah. So you're going to go to war on Shabbos, Shabbos. It's antithetical to the entire purpose of this war. Nevertheless, Sheroa Yehudim, Bechag Sukkos, when the Jews saw in Sukkos, B'Yom HaShabbos, Shenetzib Surya, that the governor of Syria, Castius Galeus, it's come close to Yerushalmi to fight with them. This is the first time Jews fought on Shabbos, an offensive war. After even though in all other matters, the day of Shabbos is very holy for the fighters. And according to the way Josephus puts it, their desire to wage war will cause them to forget their obligations to the faith. So it must be that the Sanhedrin determined then, like Shammai, Shadosh Adbrita, Shabbos, they have to fight until the destruction of your enemies, even on Shabbos. So therein, halacha became determined on himself. Over they go, Wilim, non-Jews, Shetzar, Aleres, Yisrael, who laid siege to Jewish towns, and Yotzim, Aleim, B'kli Zainom, Shabbos. You don't go out with weaponry, nor do you desecrate the Shabbos, only if they came for money. If they came for fight, physical battle. You can go out with weapons with Shabbos. As far as the city which is adjacent to the border, even if they didn't come to wage war, but even they came for straw and hay. You go out with weapons and you've the desperate Shabbos, and your neck of the woods, next to the alone in Shalvim in 1967. They got a psak from Shlomo Zalman. The Jordanians would come out, Iske Kevin Vakash. They would come and they would usurp the produce and I think also perhaps the fields of the Jews on Shabbos, but they had no intention of killing Jews. And they went to Rav Schlesinger, went to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and asked him, can we fight on Shabbos? Iske Kevin Vakash. And Rav Shlomo Zalman Paskin, yes. So this is mamish. Because Shavim wasn't Eretz Far, it was on the border. So the reticence to fight on Shabbos is very deep rooted, and even in recent times. So the Agrippas as Numo, when Agrippas gave a speech, Lo Yichriyotis and Shammai. Zevchei Ephraim Shammai. Or maybe determined if Agrippa said no. And it seems in the words of Josephus, that even he didn't know that was the psak of the Sanhedrin. So 3 opinions by war on Shabbos. Now have to pray it all. I feel tilto muktzah. Not even to carry muktzah. Then they were allowed to fight back, but not to initiate. And only afterwards they start allowing to go out to wage offensive war on Shabbos. Another difference between earlier generations and later generations. When Antiochus, famous Antiochus, sent his replacement, Lysias, with his great army, Lashminas Koyadim to eradicate all Jews, Chivas Artzena Kedosha, and to destroy our holy nation. Some of Yudah Maccabi, Shloshes Alafim Anchichayo, Chelo, Yudah Maccabi, these 3,000 soldiers put Sakim Amos name, they put sackcloth on their loins. It's Balu Hashem and Hashem, if Kol Yudah Sareitzvos Chelo, and you appointed officers on his army, Shalach Mechelo Batayim, and he sent back from his army to his houses. He sent back home the people who just got married or built a house. Which we call the Mechemes Rishus. And Mechemes Chayva Kol Yatim Avilu Chasan Mitzvah Kam Mechupasa. There's a Mechemes Mitzvah at the time you do Maccabee. The people who build houses or got married should not have gone home. Imer Chasalat War. Marsha Mama Rava Mechemes Yoshua Chabesh Dibra Kokhba. War of Yeshua to conquer everybody is mandatory. Chemes David based on the Vacha. Chemes David was to expand. So that was Divra Kol Pshus. Everybody agrees that's optional. The question is to diminish the non-Jews so they shouldn't come upon us. Everybody agrees, everybody goes out. As opposed to non-Jews, they say that they shouldn't come. Don't go out. For Rambam Perak Tezvav, he passed when did the people go back from major war? Mechemes Rishus, actual war. And Mechemes Mitzvah, Mechemes Mitzvah, everybody goes. Right? So we see what's the Mechemes Mitzvah, Mechemes Shiva Amim, Mechemes Amalek. There's some Yad Tzor Sheba'aleim. He's said explicitly. He paskins that helping Jews from their enemies who come upon them is Mechemes Mitzvah. That which it says to diminish non-Jews that they shouldn't come upon us. To make war with non-Jews who are our neighbors, to weaken them, shouldn't fight us another time. But that's that was a machlekes. And the Rambam Paskin, that's also Mechemes Mitzvah. But when the fighting against non-Jews came upon us to wage war, that's exactly like the war of Yoshua and Amalek. And you don't send people home from waging the war. It was a war to save Jews from physical and spiritual annihilation. It shouldn't be Avodah Zarah. Shouldn't eat pig. Shouldn't desecrate the holy. Most they should be able to circumcise the children. Shmor Shabbos Moy, keep Shabbos Yontif. L'taras Mikdash Hashem to purify the base of Mikdash, which grieves defiled. V'amidu bo Meshukas Meshumim, and they put a disgusting idol. Vote in front of Hayesh Mechemes Chava Mitzvah as vote. It's more and more. Hayesh Mechemes Chava Mitzvah G'dolim Mizuz, a greater, more obligatory war. Father Shapia Din. Adin Mishnah Kol Yetzim Milchamazu. Based on the Mishnah, which came after Yudah Maccabee, everybody goes after war. Yudah Maccabee, based in no. Yudah Maccabee and Biz based in Shachar Shmonoim, Sheishiva Selam Milchama, who sent these people back from the war. Bevade Loyim Mechakim Ben Milchama Milchama. They did not distinguish between war and war. You said Mishal B'chom Milchama Machzirin, and they held every war you go back. Based in Lachreim Nechel Galeim B'choku Ben Milchama Milchama. A later basin came to distinguish between war and war. So we see these two examples, both of them have to do with war, are fundamental examples of cases in which the halacha was not determined at the time of the initial issue, and it was left much later in history to actually resolve it. Okay, so you can't. He says there's so many things which we take for granted because we're living much later in history. They weren't like that. They're open issue for 1,000 years. It must be that a lot of the kings in Bayis Rishon fought on Shabbos, but most of them were Rishonim, right? Machis were Rishonim, right? Yeah. They didn't ask. They were there for the Zorah. So Mach Yehuda evidently very few. I don't know what David HaMelech did, but according to this, it seems he didn't fight on Shabbos. Okay. And that's what he says. Also, according to him, says, "Nitzei Achar Amar." Once said, I went with my hand around the other Mizbech. Yom Kippur, Hashem, my Baravli Kafte, went with my leg. That's why they had to arrange all the halachos of Karbanos, as we mentioned last time. So he brings down here the sources over here. I don't think that this one we have to see. It's not so important for us. I could have two Kohanim done at the same time. There was one Kohen God remember this way, another Kohen God remember that way. There are ways in which it happened. So the Josephus, where we not, I don't know if we can trust him on this. It says, "Because maybe Ishol Zorgon was Saddam saying his back. It's going to Shachatish. Sholi Maki is Basir Bakran Zorg is Saddam. Most Gorim is Zorg the Mayor Korbanos is Krim Sobi come his back. Makarosov. So again, he has differences of opinions as to how they did this because of Adam. So Mizeni Re Shemizmai Sabik Shloik Vadain Alocha Bezev Coin Zel Sakach Basheni Kach, especially at the time Bayis Sheni, when most of the Kohanim were stoking.
Right.
Actually, there were many different minhagim.
Wasn't Josephus also a Kohen?
Yes.
Okay, so he
I also had his own Masorah, yeah.
apparently he served in the Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we did all this. Well, who did decided what? Okay. So now the next part, I guess maybe we should leave for next time. What happened with the times of Adrianus Caesar? Did we finish this whole paragraph inside before? I think we did, right?
I really don't remember.
I don't remember either. So let's the next footnote is really in the next paragraph. So let's do the end of this paragraph again. It talks about what happened times of Hadrian. Okay, so 49 years after that, the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. So the rose upon the throne of the Caesars in Rome, Hadrian. And he permitted the Jews to build Yerushalmi, build the Beis Hamikdash. Muvay Melav, it's understood. Rishon leave no space Hamikdash. With permission to build Beis Hamikdash, the Chagam Rishon Lakrib Korbanos Teichem. They got a media license to sacrifice Korbanos. But you had Rabbi Shul near said and Shai said B'yamim Meim. Rabbi Shul testified, and front stage which existed at that time. Shemakrivin Aval B'Shem Bayis. They bring a Korbanos even though the Beis Hamikdash is not yet rebuilt. This is actually same Rabbi Yoshua. Oklim Kachi Kachi Abishen Klein. You get Kachi Kachi even though there are no walls in the Beis Hamikdash. Kachi Kachi Malkum Mahasir Sheni Abishen Klein in Yerushalmi has no wall. Chaver Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurknus Hey Shayu Banim Beichal Su Klein Bazaros. So Rabbi Eliezer Hurknus testified, and we normally understood this to mean that he meant that this is what they did when they rebuilt the second Beis Hamikdash. But evidently, the way the Zivchei Ephraim explains it, they were trying to figure out what to do now. Could be there, it was based on his history, but they're trying to figure out what to do now. So he testified, they made curtains, claim Azaros and curtains in Nazaros. So apparently he talks about in the Gemara and Zvachim, definitely the Talmud site. Fian here, basically, Lorna Hashem is better than the Moraine. Says the author was not destroyed by the Romans. The Gamla people of Korbanos Elilam also didn't sacrifice Korbanos to their gods. Supports are made by Zara, because when the Romans came into Zara, Olukanim al Mizbech al Malosov, Kohanim went on Mizbech and on different levels. Yerushalmi Tiru Zikim, and from there they threw down bolts, arrows. Chitzimo is really arrows. Spears, I think, is Zikim here. Chitzimo and arrows of death al Romain. Shiva Ramayim is Mizbech, and when the Romans surrounded Mizbech, they're Gu as Kohanim, and they killed the Kohanim. Nitzbru Tzvil Yosem Aramos on Mizbech. Their bodies lay in heaps on the altar, on Malosov at its different levels. The Nare Nachli Dam Shatli Menu, and rivers of blood flowed from there. Romans couldn't be bothered to purify the altar and clean it. And sacrifice their own korbanos on it. And evidently, according to Josephus, the Romans did sacrifice avodah zarah korbanos, but they didn't bother doing it in the where we did it, but in the Bayis opposite the eastern gate. That's the days of Adrian. They're able to reconsecrate them back. People of and sacrifice on it. They didn't have to destroy it and rebuild it. Much unto Anshe Beis Chashmonai, like the people did in the time of Chashmonai. Shishitzu Sabnei Mizbeach, they repudiated the stones of Mizbeach. Shemina Lev Vanim Shukutz Mishomim, upon which Greeks actually placed their Avodah Zarah. Upon which they sacrificed on Karbanos. By the Greeks, or by the Romans, also the Schal Mizbeach, the Mizbeach became defiled in the sense it became chulin. Idea Romaim parts of Azar by the Romans bursting into the Azar. There's a special limud about Azar Dafnu Gilayon base. Boba Pitzi by Chalalua. When the enemy comes in, it's desecrated, but doesn't render unfit. It has to be reconsecrated. That's all. That was enough, the reconsecration. They put around curtains, the Malcolm Hashem as the gates used to be. By Kriya is back called Karbanos, and they brought in all Karbanos, Bank Karbanos Yachid, Bank Karbanos Sibur, both individual and public Karbanos. Vafki Loya us Rovi so Eretz Yisrael, the majority of Jews were not in Eretz Yisrael. Chaz Ve'yu Cholim Akriv Karbanos Sibur, Aidish Zichu Lem Kesef Shekonim B'Mer Karbanos. I have to have Machzis HaShekel to give Karbanos, right? Because Maya's come back to the Shekel set to come to Israel. So there's evidently a patent, which is basically more on top of the base, that the Jews who in Eretz Yisrael were mezakim money to the Jews in Chutz La'aretz, and therefore as if the Jews from Chutz La'aretz gave the money for the Machzis HaShekel. Okay, it's going to get in much more detail now, but we'll stop here for this evening and pick up Mir Hashem here next time.
Great, sure.
Okay, very good. Okay, have a good night.
Good night. Bye.